Hey, what's up to everybody out there? Welcome to another edition of the Roundtable Talk. I am your host, C Money, and in today's episode, we're gonna talk about my timeline on social media has just been going crazy, and it's been all over the news. If you don't know by now, Spirit Airlines is closing their doors, and a lot of people are going crazy. If you don't know, Spirit Airlines is a low-cost airline service that offers low-cost flights to a lot of destinations, and they um operations or their offices was here in Fort Lauderdale. They're at the Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport, and and that was recently. They just built their offices here, their based office and stuff like that. So it was said, and if you know any more information or if you worked for Spirit Airlines, let me know. I was just looking at some of the comments and stuff, and I say, why don't I just do an episode about it? Because down my timeline on social media, that's all I see: Spirit Airlines, Spirit Airlines, Spirit Airlines. The government was supposed to help bail out Spirit Airlines, but the government said no, or whatever went down with it, and for now they have ceased all operations. When I looked at the news the day before, they were saying that they was at one of the airports here in South Florida, and it was like there was very minimum people there. There was like they still had people at the front desk and stuff. Now I seen a post online saying that they have no customer service, no nothing. They have ceased all operations because apparently nobody knew when the final date was, because everybody felt like they were still able to get flights, here and now. Like they was probably saying Spirit was probably gonna close down at the end of May. They were still accepting flights and stuff like that. No, after that, about a day or two later, flights got canceled because they were saying on the news they didn't know when they was gonna close their doors officially. Everybody think when a person say they're going out of business or they're going bankrupt or they're closing, they give you a like a 30-day notice. They tell you, oh, it's April 30th, so we'll be closing May 31st or stuff like that. They'll give you a couple of weeks to say, hey, or like when a store is closing, they say we're having a store closing sale. Everything is 50% off, 30% off, things like that. They couple of days later, because a lot of people were saying they have flights booked and they was ready to go. I seen somebody say they was stranded in Atlanta and things like that, and I'm like, oh my god, what I've noticed is let these people, I would say this, people who already booked flights, if your flight was like within the next coming week or two, like if your flight was like next week, I would say allow them to continue their flight, give it another week. But if you booked a flight for like next month or something like that, yeah, say, hey, we're gonna refund you your money. You're gonna find another. But if your flight was like tomorrow or the next day, if your flight is on a Friday and it's Wednesday, say, hey, we're gonna allow you to, like if you have a flight and it's tomorrow and they decide to say, hey, we're bankrupt, we're closing, we're ceasing operations, allow them to have their, flight. Allow to say, hey, since your flight is tomorrow, hey, you can still fly out with us, because my thing is, it's hard for people to get last minute flights, especially at lower rates, because and as I know, and I've had this done with hotels, the longer you wait, the more the price goes up. One of my favorite resort hotels is Star Island in Orlando. If you book, and one of my favorite bus services, which is no longer in Florida, and we did an episode about it, is Megabus. With Megabus, when you book, let's say for instance, now it's the beginning of May, and let's say you book a bus for June or July, your bus ticket will be cheaper. Because I used to see a lot of tickets that was like $1 to Orlando, and I was like, oh, I could get on the bus for $1. And it was like, at the time, I'm like, I can't do it because of my work schedule and things like that and stuff like that. But I was tempted to take them dollars. It was one lady, and I think I told you this story when I did a visit to Georgia, and this was back in 2019. She said her whole trip was like $10 to Atlanta, and that's because she booked it in advance. And the fact that she booked it way in advance, and it's the same thing with hotels. If you book your hotel months in advance, you'll get it a lot cheaper. But if you say you're going to book your hotel and you're going there tomorrow, you're probably going to pay $50 in January, but now you're paying $150, so you're paying $100 more because now you need a hotel. So it's things like that, and it's gonna be hard for a lot of these people who have they're going to the airport to realize my flight's been canceled. So you're paying $69 to go from here to New York. Now you're probably paying $100 to go from here to New York. And I'm like, oh my God, now I'm paying an additional $30, $40 just to go to New York. It's things like that. And when they say the government didn't want to bail them out, I say this is another case situation of Americans are left in the dark. Americans don't see nothing. Look how long this government shutdown was going down, and people was, losing their jobs, and in the last government shutdown, they say a lot of people have quit, TSA. And I said I would have quit TSA too, because TSA is not a safe job. It is a job that you're not stable, because when the government shuts down, that is one of the jobs that gets terminated. And you can't have a job where every time the government, like if you work in McDonald's or Burger King and the government shut down, you still gonna be there flipping burgers. If you working, as a janitor at the school, the government shut down, you still working, But if the government shut down and you a TSA employee, or the government shut down and you're a traffic controller, or the government shut down and you a government employee, your job is on the line. Because if they shut down and you can't go to work and you can't get paid, you can probably still go to work, but you ain't gonna get paid. It's like, dang, you get good benefits as working as a government employee, but when the government shut down, your job might be on the line. You might be on the chopping block, and it's a lot of things to put out there and affect it. And that's why I say I wouldn't mind being a government employee, but a lot of these jobs, they put you on the line, especially jobs that, and they don't do this when you get job applications. They don't tell you when you go work for these companies that's the government companies. They don't tell you, and the rest of, they don't tell you when you get hired. They tell you a lot of the good things with these jobs. Oh, you're gonna get this. You're gonna have 401k benefits, health, dental, all of these insurance. You pay vacations. PTO, all of this stuff. They don't put in the fine print. But in the midst of a government shutdown, you will be obligated to work without pay and all this other mess, and you be like, because when they be doing those medicines and all those pills that they got out now, and they be telling you at the end the side effects includes headaches, nausea, diarrhea, blah blah blah, this and that. They tell you, the little fine print. They don't do that when you get hired for the government job. Yes, you're gonna have a good paying job, PTO, health benefits, 401k, but in the rest of it, if the government shut down, you might have to work without getting paid, or you might be out of a job, and blah 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 blah. They don't tell you stuff like that. They give you all the side effects of these pills and stuff that you get from your doctors and these prescriptions and stuff, but they don't tell you the side effects of when you going to work for TSA or going to work for the airport or going to work, because a lot, your job can be shut down, and I'm like, So, with that in mind, we're getting off track here. But with Spirit Airlines, I'm gonna say, if anybody that is watching this that knows somebody, or if you are if you work for Spirit Airlines and you want to comment, please comment. And if you know somebody that works for Spirit Airlines and would like for them to weigh in, I would like to hear from you. What is your intake on this? Because, and I said this on one of the social media posts, and I said this is not the first, nor will it be the last airline to close. Because remember, we've had a lot of airlines from Pan Am, to a lot of these airlines that's came and gone. We've had so many airline companies that came and gone, and they just started, direct flights, because they just a couple of days ago they just started from American Airlines, just started having direct flights from Miami to Venezuela, and they was praising that like it ain't nothing. They was like, ooh, direct flight, because they say it used to take over 20 something hours or so. It used to take like 9, 10, 11 plus hours to get to Venezuela, and now 20 plus hours to get to Venezuela. Now it only takes you 3-4 hours to get from Miami to Venezuela. Yeah, they praising there. They had like the little water, holes is shooting out for the first flight that went out and everything. They was praising that. Then a day later, Spirit Airlines closed. And you just praising the American Airlines for getting flights to Venezuela. Now can you do something to help Spirit Airlines? And it's the fact that this ain't, like I said, this ain't the first, or this ain't the first, and nor will it be the last airline. It's just that this is one of the modern day airline companies that offered, cheap flights. You could probably get a flight for like $30, $40 from here to Orlando, and probably like $50 from here to Atlanta on Spirit, or maybe even to New York. But the fact that the government does not help out, and other people were saying, because to me, I feel sorry for a lot of these people that's losing their jobs, because that's one thing I would never do. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, and I don't knock the people who do it. But working in the airline industry, whether you're working for TSA, whether you're working for an airline company, whether you're working at the airport, whatever you're doing, working at the airport, period. Whether you're working for the airline company as one of the customer service people at the desk, whether you're a TSA worker, whatever you're doing at the airport, your job is not. You can even be working inside of one of the restaurants inside of the airport. You know how many restaurants close and open inside of airports? It's the same thing like food courts. Your job is not secure, because anything can change. Look how many airlines done changed, like just like Megabus. Megabus used to, have direct service out of Miami. They had service in Florida. They had service in Georgia. And then when they filed for bankruptcy, half of their service got cut. I still get emails from Megabus. Same thing with Save-A-Lot, which is one of my favorite food stores. They started, cutting all of their Miami, South Florida locations. And the last Save-A-Lot I've ever went to was the one in Orlando, and I don't even know if that still exists. And I've seen, like, I've looked it up, but it seems like there are a few Save-A-Lots in the northern part of Florida, but who's to say? And I look at it as if, your job is not safe when it comes to airlines and working at the airport, because you don't know what's finna go down. A lot of, first of all, the government shut down. There are some jobs that might be secure out there, but when you ground flights and you ground services and shut down airports, because, like, for instance, when a hurricane comes, all flights out of South Florida has to be shut down because of a hurricane. So that means nobody can go to work. And it's the same thing with New York and a lot of these other cities when they have massive snowstorms and blizzards and stuff like that, and tornadoes and things like that, and severe weather. All flights have to be shut down. And I remember when I was in Warner Robins, I did an episode of Warner Robins, and a friend of mine was in Atlanta, and it was raining and storming real bad. It wasn't raining bad, because remember I did an episode that I was at Rigby's Entertainment Complex, and if you've seen the episode, it was raining that day and it was kind of storming. While I was there, because it was my last day in Warner Robins, a friend of mine was on his way back to Miami on a flight, and they had to divert the flight into another area because of the severe weather. It wasn't bad weather, but with a plane and it's thundering and lightning and storming, you can't be in the path of weather. If it's just raining, you could probably just go through the rain. But when it's like thundering and lightning and severe weather, you gotta divert your plane. And he was like, "Oh, we gotta divert, to another area because of." And I'm like, a lot of these things happen, and you're like, "Oh, you can't go into work because it's a blizzard and the airplane." And I'm like, I feel for the workers. TSA. They government shut down a lot of them, and the last government shut down, because this government shut down, a lot of them quit. And I've seen that they said a lot of people quit their job. And I say I would have did the same thing, because I've been with the company for 2 years, and every time there's a government shutdown, I don't get paid. And a lot of these government shutdowns last like 10, 20 days and stuff like that. And you like, I need to pay my rent. My landlord ain't gonna want to hear, "Oh, the government shut down this year and I can't pay." When coronavirus hit, my landlord that said, "Hey, if you lost your job due to coronavirus, let us know, and we'll work with you, on a payment plan and stuff like that." A lot of these companies ain't say, a lot of these landlords ain't say, "Hey, you can stay here rent free till you get back on your feet." No, they wanted their money. And it's the same thing with a lot of these, workers. They gonna be like, their landlord ain't gonna want to hear, "Oh, I lost my job. as a TSA because the government shot. They're gonna be like, well, I feel your pain, but hey, I need my money, you know. And I look at it as if the government don't look at the fine print when a lot of these. I mean, I understand when businesses close, like, you know, a lot of these restaurants, supermarkets, and clothing stores, and a lot of these businesses. I get why they close, and some of them they can't keep up with modern day. You remember Kmart and you know, now, you know, a lot of these other businesses, you know, COVID-19 they close. But my thing is, when it's something like Spirit, or when it's something so drastic that the government can help, why not help bail out these companies to keep them for going under? You know, because a lot of these companies, they seek help. They're making money. Like Megabus was making money. The last time I was on Megabus, me and a friend of mine, the same friend I was telling you about that was in Atlanta, we took a bus trip to Orlando. And this was for New Year's. And this was a few years ago. And kid you not, going to Orlando, me and my friend had to sit together because the bus was packed. There was like everybody and their mama was getting on the bus. Going back, you know, it wasn't packed. My friend had his own, you know, seat behind me, and I had my own seat, you know, there. But going there, it was packed, meaning like everybody and their mama was on there. And they was making money. It's just that the money that they was making probably didn't support because they had they had good service in Florida. You know, it was so good. I remember I told you this in my episode when I was talking about Megabus, that they had to offer more bus service out of Miami to Orlando because they only had one bus service from Orlando to Atlanta, and they did it once a day. When I went to Atlanta in 2019, I took a bus from Miami to Orlando, and I had to do a 4-hour layover in Orlando. And at that time, they had an actual a bus stop. You know, they had it in the shopping center that housed the Save-A-Lot and stuff like that. And people, they would sit inside the bus waiting area because, you know, they had the little waiting room inside, but it was cold. So I used to sit outside and stuff, and people and then I went in McDonald's, and people was eating and stuff like that out of McDonald's. They'll order food, and that's when the lady told me about the little $10 stuff. So my thing is the $10 flight bus ride she had and things like that, and they was making decent. And then eventually they, you know, started doing extra stuff, and then they bus stop became just a like a, you know, drop off pickup stop. You know, they closed the little bus thing, the little bus station, whatever. But my thing is, you got to think about a lot of these people because in Atlanta, Megabus had a hub because they went to Mobile, Alabama, it went to Orlando, it went to different areas. You know, they even started doing service to Augusta, Georgia, and a lot of these other areas. And when they do it, a lot of people lost their jobs. And people, you know, now you try to do, where can you go at? Because now a lot of these people that work for Spirit, they got to try to see if they can get a job with another airline. And now these days, I think it's hard to find another job in the same field, you know. How can you bounce back when this airline closed and now you try to get another job with another airline and they tell you we don't have any job openings? And, you know, because remember when coronavirus hit, a lot of people who were CEOs and who was presidents and who was, you know, with these companies, who was managers and supervisors, they had to go find other jobs. Some people had to go start driving for Lyft and Uber and doing Uber Eats and doing Postmates and DoorDash. Some people had to go and find meaningful jobs. There was lawyers and doctors and, you know, not doctors, but there was lawyers and big time business people, and then they had to go work in Burger King and McDonald's just to flip burgers just to make ends meet, you know. And they was managers of 500 companies, and these companies closed down and didn't open back up, and they had to go and flip burgers at Burger King and McDonald's. You know, they couldn't find another decent job. You know, I'm a manager of an office building, and then the office building closed, and then they never opened back up, and you was like, well, now I need to go and find another job. And trying to find another job in this day and time to stay afloat, you had to do one or the other. You was either in fast food or you was a delivery person, and you couldn't even do most of that, you know, because half that was ridiculous. So it was like a lot of jobs. And now with the Spirit airline closing, it's like a lot of the same way. A lot of the, you know, the only people I know that job is secure will probably be the pilots, because the pilots, you can easily get a job with another airline because you have a, license to fly planes. So they're always going to be looking for pilots. Now you have flight attendants, customer service agents that sit at the front desk. TSA, that's nothing. Because TSA, you working, they could just strip you from Spirit over to American Airlines, or from American Airlines, or from Spirit to Southwest, or to these other, companies. So they can switch you over. It's just, the flight attendants and the customer service agents at the front desk, and, the telephone agents that you call online and stuff like that on the phone and stuff. Those are the ones that's really going to be good, because a pilot can easily get another job. Hey, we're closing. Like how I said, when a school closes and they say, oh, we're going to move everybody to another school, it could be the same way with the pilots. Hey, the pilots, y'all got, license to fly planes. So we're going to, see if American Airlines will take y'all, or Southwest will take y'all, or, stuff like that. Now, these flight attendants and all that, they got to be like, oh, yeah, now I got to see if I can get hired by American Airlines. I got to see if I can get hired by this service or that service, by Delta or by this service, and you looking at it as if, okay, how can I get, not saying, that they are, but now you have to, and it's just like losing a job and you got to start all over again, because we've all been down that road where whether we got fired, got laid off, because everybody got laid off during coronavirus. Everybody, even people who work in the fast food industry, they got laid off, because soon as they said they shut down the whole United States, they shut down the whole country to where nobody was working for a couple of days. There was nobody working. The only people that was probably working was the news people, and they had the social distance, and now nobody was working. Even the Congress people said, nope, we got to sweep. We can't do meetings in the Capitol right now. So everybody got to do meetings at home. We're gonna wait a couple of days. And stuff like that. And everybody either got, once in your lifetime, you either got one of the five. You either got laid off, fired, you quit, the company shut down, or it was a government shutdown. That was one of the other. Whether you got fired because something happened at the job and you got fired. You got laid off because the job didn't need you no more, or they was out of work, or like most people, the business is slow and they letting people go, so they got to cut hours and money. You got fired because the company closed, meaning that the company filed for bankruptcy, or the company closed all its businesses, or that happened, or the fact that things happen, and it's like a lot of these people, they don't have backup plans. Some of these people are making $5,000-$6,000 a paycheck, good money, a manager or a supervisor making good money, making $20-$30 an hour, and next thing you know, I remember when they did the police down here in South Florida, and they was trying to cut the police was trying to get money, and they say police was out there and they had a quota to meet, and they was trying to rabble for policemen to make money, and they was trying to cut services from the police, and they was like, oh baby, y'all know the police is going to be out there arresting people, because when they arrest people, or even arrest people, when they give tickets is the way for them to make money, because policemen make probably like 30, maybe 20, like 20 something, probably 30 something dollars an hour, and with those tickets, every time you put in a ticket, you get money off of those tickets, because there's stuff like that, and it's a lot that was going around, and to me, I feel as if these companies don't have solutions for their problem. Like Spirit Airlines, I feel, rest in peace to Spirit Airlines. I feel for the workers that are out there. I hope that they bounce back real soon, because this is a low blow. Because I feel, you ever get that, you ever notice, and I've seen this on social media and I've seen this with a lot of places, even with the restaurants. People get up and go to work one day, and they come to the door, and the restaurant closed without nobody noticing. And I've seen that several times. People get up, get ready, get dressed to go to work, come to work, and that happened to me actually one day where I worked at, and I actually went to work, and we were supposed to be to work the next day, and this was during coronavirus. And this was right when COVID-19 hit, and we went to work, and the security guard at the front desk at the door said the building is closed for 2 weeks, and we was on the clock for like an hour or so, and I was like, oh my god! And we were scheduled to come to work, and nobody emailed or text or anything and say, well, the building is closed, because we was, it was supposed to be where we was supposed to be going to get, you know, like we were supposed to be like cleaning up for coronavirus, because when coronavirus hit, they brought in the task and said, okay, we got to get rid of this, we got to get rid of that, we got to clean up, we did that. That happened when we opened it back up, and it was a hell of a lot of work, because they have to have a crew to come in to clean and get stuff ready and stuff like that, and say, hey, we're gonna be closed for a couple of months, so hey, we got to do certain things. This can't be here. We got to throw stuff out. We got to move things around. And when we came in, it was like, the building is closed for 2 weeks. So that means they told everybody, they told management, but they didn't tell the staff that was coming in, hey, the building is closed for 2 weeks. So for 2 weeks, everybody was out of a job where I worked at, regardless if you was part of the cleaning company, you was in different departments or whatever. So for me, it was like, that feeling that you get when you go to work and you see that sign on the door that says, this place is closed. And I'm like, oh. But in the long run, I just feel like there's a better way for this. The government could have helped them out. The government could have bailed them out. And I've said this. This ain't the first time, and this ain't the last time that an airline is going to go out of business. Because you're going to have a lot of businesses that's going out. As you know, and we're probably going to do an episode about this, Winn-Dixie is closing most of their stores, and they're converting some of their stores to Aldi's. And I've been seeing a lot of the South Florida Winn-Dixies are closing down. A lot of these, restaurants that we just did an episode recently, Denny's, that was open for 55 years. They closed their restaurant to build a high-rise mixed-use development. And a lot of these places are being closed down. And some of these are due to, of course, bankruptcy. Because, of course, I believe that's the reason for Spirit. And a lot of these other businesses are doing it because companies are buying them out. And then there are people that are saying they hope that Spirit gets bought out by another company to keep up with the low fares and stuff like that. Which is true, because who wants to pay $200 and $300 to get to New York? Where you can probably pay $100 to get to New York. Who wants to pay $500 just to go from here to the Bahamas when you could probably pay $200 to go to, things like that. There are airlines that offer low budget airline cost fees. But, you don't want to pay all these fees, and Spirit was the one. And the fact that they're doing that, just like Megabus. Megabus was low cost. Fees started at $1. And Megabus was express because they only had 5 stops in Florida. They had the Miami stop, the Fort Lauderdale Hollywood stop, the Orlando stop, the Daytona Beach stop, and the Jacksonville stop. And from Jacksonville, you went straight to Atlanta. Greyhound, you got to go to Broward. They got 2 stops in Miami. They got 2 stops in Broward. They got a Hollywood, Fort Lauderdale stop. Then you got West Palm Beach, Fort Pierce, Port St. Lucie, Orlando, Jacksonville, Daytona Beach, Tampa, Gainesville. All of these stops, and I was like, ooh, because there was a lot of stops and things like that. So, what do you your intake on the Spirit Airlines? Like I say, if you ever flew with Spirit Airlines, if you know somebody that worked for Spirit Airlines, if you was a Spirit Airline employee or anything of that, please comment, because I want to know your way in on this. We all know what the reason for their closing, because bankruptcy and they wanted they money, because why else would they close? But if you used to work for Spirit Airlines, or if you was one of the workers that just lost your job with Spirit Airlines, please comment. I want to know what your intake on this and how you feeling and how you feel about this. If you had a flight with Spirit Airlines and you was planning on flying out with Spirit Airlines, let me know what your process is. Did you get your money back? Did you find a cheaper flight somewhere, or did you have to take another flight? If you know somebody that works for Spirit Airlines and they want to weigh in, tell them to come on this page. I want to know what y'all think about this, because this is very serious, because this is not the last time that this is going to happen, because I'm quite sure they're going to be in the near future where an airline is going to be on the chopping block of shutting down, just as much as they did 10-20 years ago when a lot of airlines was in business, and now they're shutting down and all of this other stuff. So let me know. Comment at the bottom of this page. email me, roundtable305 at yahoo.com. I thank y'all for watching this episode. And as always, I'm your host, C Money. Stay safe, stay blessed, stay hydrated. And of course, if you do have a flight with Spirit Airlines, I hope you can make your flight. If you didn't make your flight before this, I hopefully, something that has a brighter day. Stay safe, stay blessed, stay hydrated. I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.